I was 76 the night I learned my brother had stolen our parents' inheritance. The news arrived the way most betrayals do, quietly, in the middle of something ordinary. I was washing dishes, hands warm in soapy water, the window cracked open to let in the hum of the city below. Traffic hissed. Somewhere far down the street, a siren wailed as if mourning someone I hadn't lost yet. Then my phone rang. It was my parents' attorney, a man whose voice I'd known since I was a girl sitting in the back of my father's office, swinging my legs under the chair. "Margaret," he said gently, "I think you should sit down. Those words always arrive before a fall." But I didn't sit. I stood with water dripping from my hands, my heart tightening like a fist. "It's about the estate," he continued. "The will has been altered." I didn't understand at first. My father's will had been clear for decades, half to me, half to my younger brother Thomas. Simple, fair. Our parents believed in balance, not favoritism. "What do you mean altered?" I asked. There was hesitation on the other end, that terrible pause when someone decides how much truth a heart can handle. "Your brother filed an amended version months before your mother died. He claimed she signed it." "My mother could barely hold a pen," I whispered. "Yes," he said darkly. "That is exactly the problem." He explained the rest in a low voice. My brother had presented a forged amendment. He had timed it perfectly, when our mother was too weak to speak and our father long buried. He had transferred every asset into his own name: the house, the land, the savings, the investment accounts. Everything. I felt the room tilt. The hum of the city outside became a roar. The sink water ran cold. When he finished speaking, I thanked him out of habit, as if courtesy could soften what had been done. I don't remember hanging up. I only remember the silence afterward, a silence that tasted like metal, like blood, like the underside of grief. My brother and I had shared a childhood bedroom with peeling wallpaper and two narrow beds separated by a single wooden nightstand. We'd whispered secrets into the dark. We'd fought. We'd made up. We'd promised to take care of each other when we grew old. But some people never grow into their promises. Greed ages faster than the heart. I sat at my small kitchen table and stared at the city lights flickering across the window glass. How many lives were unfolding at that moment? How many betrayals blooming behind apartment doors? I was a retired teacher with aching joints and a pension too small to survive a rising city. That inheritance wasn't luxury, it was survival. And Thomas had taken it knowing exactly what it meant: that I would struggle, that I would be alone, that I would choose between medicine and rent. He stole not just money, he stole my security, my dignity, my remaining years. But he miscalculated one thing. Age had not softened me. It had sharpened me, turned me into something quiet and precise. He thought I would wring my hands. He thought I would cry. He thought I would surrender. He forgot who raised us. Our mother with her iron spine, our father with his relentless discipline. The woman and man who taught me how to fight without raising my voice. Thomas forgot I was their daughter too, so I dried my hands, put on my coat, and stepped into the night, because something ancient inside me had awakened. Something slow and patient, something that had my father's eyes and my mother's unbreakable will. My brother had gambled on my weakness. Now he was about to learn how expensive that mistake would be. I walked through the city the way a woman walks after a funeral, slow, steady, holding her breath so nothing spills out. The buildings stretched above me, silver and indifferent. Taxi horns, neon signs, strangers brushing past, all of it blurred into one long pulse that matched the pounding in my chest. I wasn't going to Thomas's penthouse, not yet. When someone steals from you this cleanly, you don't confront them at their strongest. You begin where they never expect you to begin, in the shadows. So I turned left at the corner and entered a building with faded brick and an old brass plaque. Levine Amp Anderson, attorneys at law, my parents' old legal firm. Inside, the lights were dim, and the air smelled faintly of dust and polished wood. Mr. Cohen, my mother's trusted advisor for nearly 40 years, was waiting for me. He must have guessed I'd come. He stood when I entered. "Margaret," he said softly, "I'm so sorry." "No one says I'm sorry for something small." I sat down. "Tell me everything," I said. He did. Thomas had spent months cultivating relationships with people who could look the other way. A notary who didn't ask questions, a banker who blurred lines, a consultant who helped with paperwork. He forged signatures, manipulated dates, moved accounts quietly, slowly, like a snake sliding through tall grass. He left no mistakes, at least none he believed anyone would find. But greed has a scent, and I knew my brother too well. I asked Mr. Cohen the question burning a hole through my chest. "Do I have a chance?" He studied me, really studied me. "You don't just have a chance," he said. "You have something Thomas never expected." "What?" "Patience, age, and righteousness." He leaned forward. "Do you want your money back? Or do you want him ruined?" The room thinned around me. I whispered, "Both." His smile was small and dangerous. The smile of a man who had seen justice and revenge share a dance before. "In that case," he said, "we start tonight." We reviewed documents until my eyes blurred. Every signature, every transfer, every clause. And that was when I noticed it, a line at the bottom of the forged amendment, one Thomas had overlooked, a reference number belonging to an outdated policy. "Why would he use that?" I asked. Mr. Cohen's lips curved. "Because he copied an old template, and he forgot the rules changed 2 years ago, which means—" He lifted his eyes to mine. "The amendment is legally void." My heart thudded once, hard. "He can't claim anything," I breathed. "Oh, he can try," he said. "But we can bury him with this." The city hummed beneath the windows, a low growl of buses and late-night bars and distant music. I sat there absorbing it. My brother's perfect plan had a crack. A small one, a thin one, but cracks spread. Cracks become fractures. Fractures collapse the entire structure. "And there's more," Mr. Cohen said. He handed me another document, an account authorization I had never seen, because I had never signed it. My brother had forged my name too. I felt heat in my chest, not anger, recognition. Thomas hadn't just stolen. He'd assumed I would never notice, never resist, never fight. He had counted on me being small. He had forgotten that even small women cast shadows, especially in a city built from steel. When I left the office, the night smelled of cold rain and turning leaves. I pulled my coat tighter, my steps slower but firmer. Thomas had always been quick to charm, quick to lie, quick to grab what wasn't his. Good, let him keep being quick, because I was slow, older, patient. The kind of patient that waits for the exact moment to strike. My parents raised me to be kind. Life taught me to be precise. And my brother taught me that sometimes precision must be used like a blade. He took what was mine without thinking twice. Now it was my turn, and I wasn't going to think twice either. Before I confronted Thomas, I needed to see him with my own eyes. Not as the memory of the boy I grew up with, but as the man he had allowed greed to carve him into. He lived in a high-rise overlooking the river, a building of sharp glass edges and doormen who looked like they'd been carved from granite. Not the sort of place where kindness survived, but the sort of place where ambition went to lift weights alone at 3 a.m. I didn't plan to enter, only to watch. Old age grants certain invisibilities. People forget you're there, or they assume you're lost. It's one of the few perks of growing older. I sat on a bench across the street, beneath a wind-stripped maple tree. The air carried a bite, the kind that makes bones ache in quiet warning. I waited, and eventually I saw him. Thomas stepped out of the lobby like a man stepping into a spotlight he believed he deserved. Tailored coat, Italian shoes, a scarf that looked like it belonged in a magazine. He walked as if the city owed him space. But what struck me wasn't his wealth, not the shine of his watch or the way he didn't notice the doorman nod. It was the way he looked over his shoulder. A man with confidence glances forward. A man with secrets glances back. He was carrying something heavy, not physically, but in the way his shoulders twitched, his steps faltered for half a second, his eyes darted towards shadows. Guilt is a kind of weight few can disguise. I watched him lift his phone, speaking with that razor tone he used only when he felt cornered. "I told you to make it disappear," he snapped. Pause. "I don't care. Fix it." Another pause. "No, she doesn't know anything." Ah, he was speaking about me. Good. Let him believe that a 76-year-old woman didn't know how to load a document, didn't know how to call a lawyer, didn't know how to see through him. Confidence is a gambler's drug. And Thomas was overdosing. He ended the call abruptly, shoving the phone deep into his coat pocket. A gust of wind swept down the street, pushing early leaves in a spiral. He hunched his shoulders against it. The first human gesture I'd seen from him in years. For a moment, just a small one, I saw the boy he once was. The boy who brought me dandelions tied with shoestrings. The boy who cried into my shirt when our dog died. The boy who promised he'd never hurt me because Mum said we're each other's forever. But that boy was long gone, buried under ambition, pride, and the intoxicating thrill of getting away with something. He crossed the street and disappeared around a corner. His shadow stretched long behind him. Greed lengthens a man's shadow more than any sunset. I stood, knees aching slightly, and began walking back toward the subway. Not fast, not slow. The pace of a woman with a plan. Thomas thought he knew who I was. He thought I was gentle, predictable, harmless. But he didn't know the truth. There are two kinds of elderly women in this world. The ones the world protects, and the ones the world should fear. I had spent my entire life being the first kind. It was time to become the second. The next morning, I went to the bank, not to withdraw anything, not to check my balance, to watch, because money leaves footprints, and my brother had been running barefoot through every account he could touch. The lobby was warm, filled with the soft hum of printers and the scent of overly sweet coffee someone spilled near the counter. People underestimate small banks. They forget that tellers hear more confessions than priests. I walked up to the window of a woman named Sandra, short hair, sharp eyes, too observant to gossip, too honest to stay quiet when something's wrong. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore," she said with surprise. "You haven't been in for months. What can I help you with?" "I'd like to see activity on my parents' old estate account," I said gently, "the one that was closed." Her eyebrows twitched. "Closed? Let me check." She typed. She frowned. She typed again, slower this time. "Ma'am, it wasn't closed. It was transferred." "By whom?" I asked, though I already knew. She lowered her voice. "It says your brother approved it as sole inheritor. He provided a copy of your mother's amended will." My stomach tightened. "And did you verify it?" Sandra's expression changed. Guilt, confusion, and then anger not directed at me. He waved paperwork and said the lawyer notified all beneficiaries. He seemed in a hurry. Of course he was. Thieves rush. The innocent take their time. "Could you print the authorization?" I asked. She hesitated, only for a moment. Then she printed it, slid it across the counter as if handing me contraband. I picked it up, turned it slowly in my hands. My mother's signature. Almost perfect. Almost. Except she always looped the G in her name twice, a small flourish she'd had since she was a schoolgirl. This signature didn't have it. My fingers tightened around the paper. Sandra watched me with concern. "Is everything all right?" I forced a soft smile. "Oh, yes, dear. Everything is finally falling into place." Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying the sharp scent of rain on concrete. I walked to the bus stop and sat on the cold metal bench. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't quicken, my heart didn't crumble. Instead, something clicked into place inside me, like a key turning in a door that had been locked for years. Thomas didn't steal accidentally. He didn't steal impulsively. He didn't steal out of desperation. He stole because he believed he could. He stole because he believed I would accept it. That old age meant surrender. That grief meant weakness. That love meant blindness, that I didn't have the teeth to bite back. But there is nothing sharper than a woman who has lost everything and decided she has nothing left to fear. On the ride home, the city blurred past in streaks of yellow and grey. Taxi roofs, billboards, people rushing with takeaway coffees and unreadable expressions. Everyone living their own story, unaware that mine had finally shifted. When I reached my building, I climbed the stairs slowly, the paper with my mother's forged signature folded neatly in my coat pocket. I didn't need to call my lawyer yet. No, this was the time for the first strike. Small, quick, silent. I sat at my kitchen table, pulled out my notebook, and began writing. Names, dates, amounts. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every suspicious transfer. A map of his greed. A blueprint of his downfall. I wrote until my wrist ached. Then I wrote a little more. Because revenge is like music. It needs rhythm, timing, and a precise opening note. And I had just found it. When I finished, I leaned back in my chair. The city lights outside the window blinked like watchful eyes. And I whispered to no one and everyone, Thomas, you should have left me with something. Because now I was coming for everything. The next step was simple, not dramatic, not noisy, not confrontational. Just a phone call, not to Thomas, not to the banker, to his employer. People forget that corporations watch their money like hawks. And Thomas worked in finance. Ironically, he held a senior position at a private investment firm, the kind that fires people for misplacing a single decimal, the kind that doesn't tolerate ethical misunderstandings. I dialed the number listed on their website. A woman answered, her tone crisp but polite. Good afternoon, Hargrave Capital. This is Denise. How may I direct your call? I need to report a serious discrepancy involving one of your executives, I said softly. She paused, tone shifting. May I ask your name? You may, I said. I gave it. Calm, measured, certain. And what is the nature of the discrepancy? I have reason to believe, I said gently, that my brother Thomas Whitmore has been manipulating legal documents and forging signatures in a private inheritance matter. Another pause, longer, sharper. Mrs. Whitmore, we take fraud allegations extremely seriously. I imagine you do. Do you have proof? I have documents, I said, and I have a lawyer preparing a case. More silence, waited, telling. Would you be willing to forward those documents to our compliance office? Yes, I said, in due time. For now, consider this a courtesy warning. A breath. Then, understood, ma'am. I hung up. No threats, no anger, no shouting, just a small, steady push. And in the world Thomas inhabited, even the smallest push was enough to send the tower wobbling. By evening, the city air felt heavy. Storm clouds pressing low, a metallic scent rising from the sidewalks. I made myself tea, sat in my chair by the window, and watched the sky darken. I didn't feel triumphant, no exhilaration, no adrenaline, just clarity. Some wars are fought with swords, others with silence. This one required both. Around 9 o'clock, my phone lit up. Thomas. Of course, I let it ring, and ring, and ring. He called again and again. On the 5th attempt, I answered, not because he deserved my voice, but because I wanted to hear the fear in his. Margaret, he began, breathless, what did you do? Good evening, Thomas, I said lightly. As you may recall, you stole several $100,000 from me. You called my firm. Yes. Do you have any idea what position that puts me in? I imagine. I said, it's a position you've earned. He cursed under his breath. You're insane. You're going to ruin my career. No, Thomas, I said softly. I'm going to reveal your choices. What happens afterward is simply the bill coming due, he snarled. You won't win. I let out a quiet breath, not laughter, something gentler and more dangerous. I already have, I whispered. He inhaled sharply. You think you're strong because you talked to a bank clerk or made a phone call? His voice cracked, rage and fear dancing together. I have connections. I have friends in every corner of this city. No, I said. You have debts. Friends don't matter when the audit begins. Audit? His voice pitched high. What audit? A slow smile touched my lips. Oh, Thomas, you didn't think I came into this blind, did you? The line fell quiet, terribly, beautifully quiet. Then he whispered, What are you doing? Pulling the thread, I said. The one holding your entire life together. A soft, broken exhale answered me, then, You're destroying me. No, I said. I'm letting you destroy yourself. I'm just turning on the light so you can finally see it. He didn't argue, he didn't threaten, he didn't beg. He hung up. And that silence, that beautiful, clean silence, was the first true sound of victory. Outside my window, lightning cracked over the river, briefly illuminating the city. A storm was coming. For Thomas, it had already begun. Storms in the city always sound like truth spilling out of broken mouths. Rain against glass, wind bending metal, thunder rolling over rooftops like a warning. Thomas didn't call the next morning, but other people did. The world around him began to whisper, and whispers can ruin a man faster than any lawsuit. The first call came at 8:12 a.m. It was his assistant, a young woman named Hannah, who had always been polite to me at family gatherings, even after Thomas instructed her to keep things professional outside office hours. She sounded rattled. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't know if I should be calling you, but something is happening. I waited. Compliance pulled all of Thomas's files this morning. They won't tell me why. They're interviewing his whole team. Her breath hitched. And he hasn't shown up. Of course he hadn't. A man like Thomas goes missing the moment accountability walks through the door. Thank you, dear, I said gently. You don't owe loyalty to someone who built his career on lies. She hesitated. I know. And she hung up. The second call came an hour later, this one from a number I didn't recognize. A man cleared his throat. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Detective Averill with the Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to meet with you. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that settle. Of course, I said. I've been expecting your department to get involved. We received an anonymous tip regarding forged signatures and questionable estate movements, he continued, and your name was mentioned. I smiled softly. Anonymous? How considerate. We'd like you to bring any documentation you have. I have plenty. The storm was growing teeth. By noon, my apartment felt too small for the weight of everything happening. I put on my coat, took the bus to the precinct, and walked into a small room with pale walls and a table that had seen too many stories crumble across it. Detective Averill was younger than I expected. Sharp posture, steady eyes, the kind of man who notices details before he notices people. He offered me water. I declined. Tell me about your brother, he said. I didn't dramatize, I didn't exaggerate, I didn't soften, I told the truth. Simple, clean, devastating. By the time I laid out the forged signatures, his jaw had tightened. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, this is not a civil matter. This is felony-level fraud. I assumed as much. We will need to open a formal investigation. I understand. And it may become public. I also understand. A small pause. You don't seem afraid. I folded my hands gently. I've been 76 for a while now, I said. Fear gets tired with age, but justice does not. He nodded. This will hurt him. I held his gaze. He hurt himself. When I stepped back outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled metallic, like the world had been scoured clean. I took the bus home again, watching pedestrians rush through puddles, their umbrellas turning inside out from the wind. A notification lit up my phone. A news alert. Local investment executive under review for possible estate misconduct. My breath caught, and then steadied. He was unraveling publicly now, not because of me, but because of his own choices finally catching up to him. The city had begun to speak his name, and not the way he wanted. That evening, as I stirred a pot of soup on my stove, the phone rang again. Thomas. I let it ring until the last possible second, then I answered. His voice was a whisper, broken, hoarse, frantic. Margaret, please. Not anger, not arrogance, fear. What is it, Thomas? I said quietly. They're going to fire me, he rasped. They're talking about charges, fraud. I didn't think... You didn't think I'd fight, I finished for him. Silence. Then he exhaled a shuddering breath. I'm ruined. No, I said. You're accountable. He made a choking sound, part laugh, part sob. I can fix this, he said suddenly. I can talk to the board. I can move some things around. I can... Thomas, I interrupted. The time for fixing was before you stole from your own sister. His voice collapsed into a whisper. I don't want to go to prison. And I didn't want to spend my final years in poverty, I said. We don't always get what we want. Silence again. Thick, wet, like regret. Finally, he said, Why are you doing this to me? I closed my eyes. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm letting you face the cost of what you did. He breathed in sharply, like the truth had punched him. I need to see you, he said. Please. No. Margaret. This isn't a conversation anymore, I said. This is a reckoning. And I hung up. I stood there in my dim kitchen, soup simmering, rain ticking softly on the glass. I felt no triumph, only the heavy, solemn weight of justice. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet turning of a wheel that has been still for far too long, and once it turns, it doesn't stop. I didn't hear from Thomas again for 3 days, not a text, not a call, not even a pathetic voicemail. But other people kept calling, his co-workers, his assistant, a journalist from a small financial newspaper, even a woman I didn't recognize who said she used to date him and always knew something was off. Greed makes a man popular until it catches fire. Then everyone steps back to avoid the smoke. On the 4th evening, just after sunset, someone knocked on my door. Not tapping, not frantic pounding, a single hesitant knock. The kind people make when they aren't sure if they should be there at all. I opened the door halfway. Thomas stood in the hallway. But not the Thomas the world knew, not the polished executive, not the confident charmer. This Thomas looked 10 years older, eyes sunken, hair dishevelled, suit wrinkled as if he'd slept in it. His hands trembled slightly. Can I come in? He asked. No, I said. He swallowed, nodding as if he expected that. Then he leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion radiating from him like heat from pavement. They suspended me, he whispered. I said nothing. They froze my accounts. My firm reported me to the state. The detective you spoke to, he called me today. Still, I said nothing. Thomas's voice cracked. They might press charges. And they should, I said simply. His face crumpled. I didn't think it would go this far. That is the privilege of a thief, I replied, to believe consequences are optional. He looked down at his shoes, rain-speckled and worn through at the edges. He had always taken pride in immaculate clothing. Seeing him like this made something in my chest twist. Not pity, not forgiveness. Recognition. This was the moment he became human again. He lifted his eyes. What do you want from me? I took a slow breath. Tell the truth. He blinked. About what? About everything, I said. The forged will, the accounts, the signature you faked, the money you stole. All of it. His voice turned sharp. I'll go to prison. You should have considered that before you rewrote our mother's legacy. He flinched like I'd struck him. Then he whispered, barely audible, I didn't think you'd punish me. I'm not punishing you, I said softly. You're experiencing the cost of your choices. That's not punishment. That's balance. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I was desperate, he murmured. No, I said. You were greedy. He didn't deny it. The hallway lights flickered above us, faint hum filling the silence. Margaret, he said, please, tell me what to do. And for the first time since he stole everything, I felt the shift. The moment he broke, the moment his facade cracked wide open, the moment he was finally ready, not for forgiveness, but for fear. You will go to the detective tomorrow, I said, and you will confess. His shoulders tensed. And what? What will you do? I held his gaze. I will let the law decide. He exhaled shakily, a sound between defeat and acceptance. Then he asked the question I knew had been burning in him for weeks. Do you hate me? I looked at him. This broken man, my brother, the thief of my future, the child my mother once rocked to sleep. I don't hate you, I said quietly. I just stopped protecting you. His eyes filled, but he didn't cry. He nodded once, turned, and walked down the hall. His steps were slow, uneven, not a powerful man's stride, a condemned man's shuffle. The elevator doors closed behind him with a soft metallic sigh. And I stood there, hand still on the doorknob, listening to the hum of the city outside my window. The storm had passed, but the damage remained. And tomorrow, the world would learn the truth he'd buried under years of ambition and lies. Tonight was the night he fell. Tomorrow would be the morning the world heard the crash. The next morning dawned cold and sharp, the light slipping between buildings like a blade. I woke before sunrise. Age does that to you. So does waiting for justice. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched fog roll in from the river. A soft, ghost-like veil settling over the rooftops. Somewhere out there, my brother was preparing to confess. Whether he would actually do it, I didn't know. But the world had stopped being kind to Thomas, and the world rarely offers a second kindness. Around 10 a.m., the first message arrived. From Detective Averill, he came, we're talking now. No pleasantries, no details, just confirmation that Thomas had walked into the lion's den. I set the phone aside. My hands didn't shake. A lifetime of teaching had trained me to be patient. A lifetime of losses had trained me to be steady. But a lifetime of betrayal had taught me this. Justice walks slowly, but it does arrive. By noon, the world began whispering. It started with a headline on a small financial blog. Investment executive under investigation for estate fraud, no names yet, no specifics. But the machinery had begun turning, and it would not stop. An hour later, another headline, possible forgery tied to high-ranking employee at Hargrave Capital, still no names. But people in finance know how to read between lines. Then, at 3:47 p.m., as I was slicing vegetables for dinner, my phone buzzed 3 times in rapid succession. 3 different sources, 3 different alerts, all with the same revelation. Thomas Whitmore under criminal review for alleged inheritance manipulation. His name, finally spoken aloud. His secrets, the ones he thought would remain buried, were now public property. I set the knife down, took a steadying breath, not satisfaction, not joy, just a profound, heavy exhale. Because truth, once released, flies like ashes on wind. You cannot gather it back. My phone rang. Not Thomas, his assistant, Hannah. Her voice trembled. He confessed, she whispered. To everything. I closed my eyes. What will the firm do? I asked. They terminated him immediately. Security escorted him out. They've frozen all his accounts. Good. A shaky breath on the other end. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. I didn't know. You couldn't have known, I said gently. He hid things well. And now it's all over the news, she added softly. He's ruined. Yes, I said, and he ruined himself. She didn't argue. She hung up. By evening, my brother's downfall was everywhere. Financial feeds, local news, small radio segments, social media threads full of strangers tearing apart a man they'd never met. This is what happens when secrets bleed into daylight. People come running with buckets to carry the story home. My phone vibrated again. This time, a message from Detective Averill. We have enough for charges, likely embezzlement, forgery, and estate fraud. I stared at the screen. I wasn't smiling. There is nothing sweet about justice, only rightness, only balance, only the bare, cold structure of consequences finally fitting themselves onto the person who earned them. At 9:02 p.m., Thomas finally called. One ring, another. I let him wait. Then I answered. His voice was hollow. Margaret, everyone knows. I know, I said quietly. They took everything. No, I said. They took what wasn't yours. A shaky breath. Are you happy? He whispered. The question hung between us, raw, painful, trembling. I stepped to the window. The city was a map of lights and shadows below, cars inching along wet streets, sirens echoing like distant confessions. No, Thomas, I said softly. I'm not happy. I'm simply no longer suffering. He didn't speak, so I continued. You stole my future. You expected me to die quietly in the dark. You expected me to disappear. But instead, here we are. He let out a sound, not a sob, not a sigh, something in between. I don't know what to do, he whispered. You face what's coming, I said. You don't run, you don't hide, you don't lie again. You walk through the fire you started. A long, trembling silence. Then, I'm scared. I closed my eyes. At last, truth, real truth. I know, I said, and you should be. He didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't turn cruel. He just breathed, broken, human, small for the first time in his life. Good night, Thomas, I said quietly. Margaret, but I hung up, because some endings require a closed door, and this one had just swung shut with a soft final click. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday. Funny how life can shatter on such forgettable days. The courthouse was an old stone building downtown, its steps worn smooth by decades of feet. Criminals, victims, witnesses, children, widows, liars, truth-tellers, all of them leaving something behind on these stairs. I arrived early, not to watch him fall, but to watch him face it. Facing is always harder than falling. Inside, the air smelled of oiled wood and anxious sweat. People murmured quietly, like they were waiting for a eulogy. Maybe they were. Thomas arrived 20 minutes late, not because of arrogance this time. He looked like a man who'd struggled to breathe, to stand, to dress. His suit hung wrong, as if fear had stolen the space he once occupied. He didn't look at me as he took his seat across the aisle, but I saw him glance, just once, like a child scanning a crowd for someone who used to be his home. I didn't nod, I didn't glare, I didn't look away, I simply existed, steady, unmoving, the opposite of him. The judge entered. The courtroom rose. Proceedings began. Charges were read aloud: forgery, embezzlement, misappropriation of estate assets, fraudulent notarization, identity, falsification. Each word fell like a stone, dropped in deep water. Thomas didn't flinch for the first two, but during the third, his eyes closed. And during the fourth, he swallowed hard. During the fifth, his hands shook. His lawyer, an expensive man with a cheap soul, tried to spin it. Temporary misjudgment, emotional distress, a misunderstanding, a family dispute gone awry. But truth has a weight that arguments can't lift. And the judge saw through every threadbare excuse. Then came my turn to speak. I walked to the stand slowly, not out of frailty, but because the moment deserved gravity. The bailiff swore me in. The judge nodded. The courtroom stilled. Mrs. Whitmore, the prosecutor said gently, could you tell us, in your own words, what happened? I didn't look at Thomas. I looked at the judge. My brother, I began, believed my age made me too fragile to notice a betrayal. I kept my voice soft. Soft carries farther in a silent room. He believed my grief over losing our parents made me easy to deceive. He believed that if he stole quietly enough, if he forged precisely enough, if he lied confidently enough. I paused. I would simply wither away. No one moved. He did not steal money. He stole my safety, my future. He stole the years I am supposed to rest after a lifetime of work. My throat tightened, but I didn't let it break. And when I uncovered his theft, he expected I would protect him, because that is what I have done my entire life. The courtroom held its breath. But there comes a day, I said quietly, when protecting someone becomes enabling them. I folded my hands on the stand. Today is that day. No drama, no shaking voice, no theatrics, just truth. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. I stepped down, and only then, only once, I allowed myself to look at Thomas. He was crying silently, not begging tears, not manipulative tears, broken tears. The kind a man cries only after the wreckage has already settled. When the judge delivered the verdict, his voice was firm, unshaking. Thomas Whitmore, this court finds you guilty on all counts. A gasp rippled through the room. Not from me. I already knew how the world would turn. Thomas closed his eyes. A single tear slid down his cheek. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just human. Sentencing wasn't immediate. It would be decided in a separate hearing. But the damage, that landed in real time. License revoked, career destroyed, assets frozen, public reputation burned. And the final blow, the judge ordered preliminary restitution, meaning he would be required to repay what he stole from me. Every cent, with interest. I felt no joy, only release. A pressure leaving my chest after years of silence I didn't even know was pressing. After the hearing, people began to empty the courtroom. I stayed seated, waiting for the tide to leave. Thomas approached slowly, like a man approaching a headstone. He stood beside me, not too close, hands shaking. I don't know what I am anymore, he whispered. I looked at him. Older than me suddenly, smaller than me suddenly. You are what you chose, I said softly. I didn't mean to ruin everything. People rarely do, I answered. They ruin things because they think no one is watching. He exhaled, ragged. Margaret, is there anything left between us? A long moment passed. The city hummed beyond the courthouse walls. Wind pressed against the windows. The world waited, and I said, there is truth, and truth is enough. He nodded, slowly, painfully. Then he walked away, escorted by his lawyer, and I let him go. Not out of anger, out of finality, because some endings are loud, and some endings are quiet. But the hardest endings of all are the ones that feel like peace. After the verdict, the city moved on. It always does. Headlines shifted to newer scandals. People went back to their commutes, their coffee runs, their small heartbreaks and small victories. But for Thomas, the world did not move. It closed in. The day after the hearing, I woke early, not from nerves, but from the strange lightness that comes when a long darkness finally lifts. I brewed tea, opened the window, listened to the hum of the waking city. For the first time in months, the air didn't taste like fear. At noon, I received a call. Not from a detective, not from a lawyer, from an unknown number. I didn't answer on the first ring, or the second. I let silence settle around me before finally picking up. Mrs. Whitmore? A man's voice asked. This is Dean Turner. I'm Thomas's landlord. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said. What happened? He cleared his throat. Well, He hasn't paid rent in 3 months, and I'm calling because. A pause. A heavy, uncomfortable pause. Because he disappeared this morning. I straightened a little. Disappeared. He vacated the unit without notice, moved out at dawn, left the keys on the counter. I waited. And he left something behind, the man added. What? A letter addressed to you. My fingers tightened around the phone. I'll come by, I said. His building felt different this time. The doorman didn't greet me. The marble floors felt colder. The elevator's mirrored walls reflected a woman who had been through a war she didn't choose. The landlord met me on the 14th floor. He didn't take much, he said quietly. Just clothes, a suitcase, a few documents. Of course, when a man loses everything, he only collects what he can carry. He handed me the envelope. My name written in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. Thick strokes, uneven from haste. I didn't open it yet. Instead, I stepped into the empty apartment. The windows still held the view, the river, the skyline, the glass towers cutting the sky. But the place felt hollow, lifeless, abandoned in spirit long before in body. I walked through the room slowly. His desk drawers gaped open. The closet hung empty, a few wire hangers swinging like ghosts tired of being useful. A single broken mug sat in the sink. Failure has a smell. It lingers like stale air. Only when I reached the living room did I open the letter. It was short. Margaret, I'm leaving the city for a while. I don't know who I've become. Maybe I never knew. You were right not to protect me. It was the first honest thing anyone has done for me in years. I will face the consequences, but not here, not yet. When I am ready, I will call. If you don't want to hear from me, I understand. Thomas, I stood silently, reading it twice, then a third time. It wasn't an apology, not fully. It wasn't forgiveness either. It was a surrender. A white flag from a man who had finally realized he was not invincible. A man who thought money made him untouchable. Until truth touched him harder than prison ever could. I folded the letter into my coat pocket. As I left the building, the wind outside hit sharp and bitter, like winter preparing its teeth. But I didn't shiver. Some people spend their lives afraid of endings. But endings are only frightening when you haven't earned them. Thomas had earned his, and I had earned my peace. 3 weeks later, I received another call, this time from Detective Averill. We've completed the investigation, he said. There's more. More? Yes. Something your brother didn't know you'd find. He paused. A hidden account. My breath caught. What kind of account? An offshore one, in your mother's maiden name. My pulse quickened, slow, steady, disbelieving. This account, he continued, was untouched for decades. Your father must have set it up. It was meant for his children. But only one name remains authorized. Whose? I whispered. A smile entered his voice. Yours, Mrs. Whitmore. I pressed a hand to my chest. How much? And what he said next made my knees tremble in a way the courtroom never had. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life, enough to rebuild everything. Silence washed over me, deep, trembling, warm. My father had known, my mother had known. They had protected me long after death. And Thomas, he had never even found this account. He had stolen ashes while the treasure slept under a name he never thought to search. The final turn of the knife, the final balance of justice, the final twist of fate. His betrayal led me straight to the fortune he tried to erase. That night, I sat at my window, the city shimmering below like a sea of restless stars. I felt no hatred, no revenge, no triumph, just peace, pure, quiet peace. My brother lost everything he stole. I regained everything they meant for me to have, and the world, finally, felt balanced. Even at 76, life had given me one last truth. You cannot steal what was never yours, and you cannot stop what was always meant to find its way home.